This is Paul Mikesell, founder and CEO of Carbon Robotics, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by Walt Duflock from Western Growers. Walt, maybe tell us quickly about Western Growers.
Sure, Paul, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We are a trade group focused on fruits, nuts, and vegetable growers, so the largest 2,000 of those. And we do advocacy, we do some insurance and benefits for them, and then we do obviously science and innovation.
Great.
So I work with all of them to make sure the innovation, like you guys, happens faster.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you folks did a report on the economic value of LaserWeeder earlier last year. Mm-hmm. Thank you for doing that. We didn't know you were doing that, but it turned out really nice. It was very helpful, I think, just to show growers and farmers the value and benefit of LaserWeeder. So Thank you for doing that, mostly for the farmers so they could see what was happening. So we're here at World Ag Expo 2025. This is our 4th year in a row in attendance here. Our first year was in 2022 before we even had any machines built. Mm-hmm. And so we had a mock-up that we called the Beauty Slayer, the demo Slayer, that we still have somewhere. I don't know what we're gonna do with that. We keep talking about having a party and going out and burying it in the desert somewhere. That's the plan. That's currently the thinking.
Burning Man.
yeah, exactly. So we were selling the Generation 1, the G1 LaserWeeder, and man, it's been an amazing couple of years. The farmers were just incredibly receptive and welcoming to us and that product line. And I think we've done a good job of service and support and just giving the farmers what they need to keep LaserWeeder moving and happy and get everything they need to get done. So the Generation 1 LaserWeeder, and we're really proud of that machine. A lot of farmers are getting a lot out of it. What we're showing and announcing today is the Gen 2, the G2, the 2nd generation LaserWeeder. It is faster, lighter, modular. Faster, higher power lasers. It's lighter. The architecture allows it to be just a less heavy machine. And it's modular. What does modular do? Why is that important for farmers and farming? Because it allows us to build different size machines for the first time ever. Yep. So the only thing we had before was that 20-footer, which has been really good for specialty veg. Now we can build all the way down to a 6-footer for smaller farms, a 40-footer and a 60-footer for corn for the first time. So those are rolling out this year as well. And yeah, really like having the LaserWeeder. And I think your organization through the years has been incredibly helpful to us as well. So thank you for all of that.
Of course, no, you guys have been great partners.
Yeah.
The announcement's really exciting for us because our farmers have been telling you what you've been hearing, which is, hey, we'd like a few more formats. We'd like it a little smaller, a little less heavy, right? Get rid of some of those issues. And I think this rollout obviously gets you into the Midwest, but really gives our guys in the desert, in Salinas Valley, in the Central Valley, 3 options now to think about from a price point and a weight and a range perspective. I think it's great news.
Right. So, and we also, last year was great. We got into a lot of European growers as well. Germany, France, Denmark, Spain, Italy. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff. Netherlands, if I didn't say it. Australia has been really strong. Yeah. Right. So what are your thoughts on ways in which we can strengthen and help American farmers, particularly farmers in your region and Western growers? What are some things that we could be doing as a technology company or just a company or group of people that cares about farmers and farming?
Yeah, no, and I think you're already doing it. We're doing it together. I think getting those case studies out there, like the one we did on carbon and stout, to be fair, more common. And that's the whole thing is we want the numbers for everybody. Yeah. I've told my membership, I don't want any of you guys buying a robot before you've done the math with the startup to make sure it's legit.
Please,
everyone's operation, you guys know this. Yeah. Everyone's operation is different. None of you guys are scared of math, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's the growers we have to convince that should do the math. So the case study was great, and I'll share the numbers for you because we were ecstatic about what we found. And you may not have known a lot, but your team was certainly working with us to help us track this down. And it's not easy numbers to get. Sure. But what we found was in year 1 for Braga Fresh, 3,200 acres of 7 different certified organic crops went from $2.1 million in labor, right? That's a big number. Right. To $1.3 million a year later with the robot.
Great.
That $800,000, every grower should know that number, and every grower should say, that's not my number.
Right.
So we have an economic template they can use. We're going to have a Western Growers resource that they can use to help source that number out. And that's step 1, is just getting your numbers and helping them understand the importance of doing the math and knowing your numbers. And then along with that, the more you guys can do to show them why this stuff matters, the more the sales cycle will work itself out, right? Oh, you should think about a 200 because of this use case, a 400 because of this use case. I mean, you guys were the first to tell me, hey, we don't work well in some of the crops, right? So some of the 6-line stuff, but for the high density stuff and pre-emergent, we're the stuff. And I felt like that use case knowledge was really huge. So helping our growers understand the when and the when nots is really going to be huge. And I think case studies and templates are doing that. We'll be doing them with the other startups as well, so folks can figure out where to put it. But it's going to be a mix of automation solutions. You guys are certainly in a leadership position for weeding right now.
Great, yeah, thank you. And that economic template is, anybody can download it from your website, right? You folks worked on it. It's got all the cost inputs, and then it gives you an equation and some numbers to look at the end. So, and certainly, with our moving into the corn and soy, we're doing some new stuff that I'd like to do some numbers with them eventually, if we can. Because on those 40-foot units and the 60-foot units, we have different spacing on the laser modules to match up with the corn lines, right? So it's not the same density. So, more to come on that front. Anything you want to say about the new administration, farming, optimism, things that are good or bad? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm really optimistic about RFK Jr. pending confirmation, right? And it might have happened by now, we'll see. But I think the MAHA, the Make America Healthy movement, has some big winners to be played out in it, right? Number one, I think specialty crops is a big winner potentially, right? We are the healthiest, best alternative to medicine you could ask for, right?
Absolutely.
Strawberries, lettuce, salads, all good. So the more we can get folks aware that, hey, you know what, before you need some of those pharma products and some of those medicine products, maybe just eat a little better and go to the gym, right? Totally fair. So we think specialty crops comes out ahead on that. We think some of the protein products, because of the high density, the beef and dairy, may do okay. We think Midwest crops struggle a little bit in a MAHA environment, right? Then if you flip the bit to, okay, what about tariffs and immigration? Those could be, and I've got friends in DC and Sacramento that are way more knowledgeable than I am on this, but at a high level, tariffs obviously impact prices of products. We'll see what kind of an impact that has. But the really big tailwind, ironically, for automation solutions is if you make domestic labor harder to get by running some of it off or scaring it away, you create even more of an incentive for automation, because not only is automation going to deliver the math we saw with the Braga Fresh study, it's going to give you certainty. So if growers are looking at taking on new acreage and not sure where the labor is going to come from, and just to give you some numbers, you probably know them, but to give the audience some numbers, we're at a 90-10 rate for California labor right now. 90% of our labor is in-state, costs us $17 to $18 an hour, but 10%, and it's growing fast, it's gone 3x the last 5 years, it's at $30 an hour. Because by the time you get an H-2A worker housed, transported and fed, you're at $30 an hour. So when you look at taking on new acreage, if you're not sure where you can get that labor and how much it's going to cost, automation gives you some mitigation of risk around the capital for that acquisition.
I did listen to some of the interviews with Trump and the folks in his administration when he was talking about the new immigration policies. And one of maybe the difficult spots was about farm labor, of course. And the thing that they said over and over again was, we need to automate our way out of that. So that's a pretty interesting take. It was surprising for me to hear, and I didn't realize the degree to which, maybe the administration was even thinking about that stuff. Do you see any downstream effect of that? Any help or any ways in which the federal government is trying to incentivize that kind of automation? Or do you think that's kind of TBD, or have you seen anything in that
No,
nature?
so we've had some conversations with the folks back there in the administration. I've got a couple PowerPoint decks that are making their way around, which I'm excited about. We'll see if I get a chance to go talk to some folks. But the short version is, I think when you look at the administration, you got folks like J.D. Vance, who played in the venture capital area. You've got Vivek Ramaswamy, right? You've got Elon. You've got David Sachs. You've got some guys back there who have at least seen the decks, if not written the checks, and probably know some guys who have written the checks, right? So I think the awareness that automation is the alternative, or it relocates, is getting to be more obvious. And I've certainly got some thoughts on that. And so I think, ironically, you guys are the tip of the spear, because think about the California labor situation, $16.3 billion every year for 850 million hours. 1/3 of it non-harvest, that's your guys' segment and others, 2/3 of it harvest. We've barely cracked the surface on weeding, and we're about 1.5% of weeding hours right now with you guys and others. But that's 98.5% not. And at Harvest, we're at 0.
Yeah.
So anything they can do to give technology incentives for the R&D and the commercialization would be great. But also think about turning CARB, right? So this is state, there's a federal equivalent, but think about turning CARB. We paid
CARB is California Air
Resources Board. Thank you. Me and acronyms, not good. They gave $110 million out to folks who retired diesel tractors or bought EV tractors like Monarchs. Why don't they give every autonomous solution provider that kind of capital incentive to their customers, right? You guys should be able to take advantage of that. All the vendors should be able to take advantage of that. It shouldn't just be EV tractors, right? If we really care about keeping ag in California, incent the robot purchase.
I would think
the
so,
automation purchase.
I also saw, some of the interesting things about CARB. I mean, they tell everybody it's got to be EV. Some growers are ahead of the curve and investing in that stuff, and then CARB almost at the last minute pulls that regulation back.
Right.
So who gets penalized the most? It's the farmers who dove in right away and said, okay.
The early adopters, right? They get thoroughly punished.
So I feel like some of that legislation, legislative-driven changes, when CARB sends those kind of head fake messages, I think it hurts their case in the future. Because if I'm a farmer, I'm going to say, is it real this time? Are you serious this time?
Exactly.
Right?
Which has an impact on your business as well, right? If they're uncertain, your sales slows down, right? Which our
sales takes off no matter what because we have good machines. But
fair enough. But some other folks may slow down. Yeah.
But I feel like I just
uncertainty is bad.
Yeah, uncertainty is bad. honestly, I wish that CARB would be a little more consistent.
100%.
And really that California would be a little more consistent. I mean, there's a real danger that they fall behind with some of the perception and reality that they're anti-automation, anti-autonomy as an example. Do you see that changing? What do you think needs to happen for that to change? I don't want to get you in trouble, so I don't know what you can say.
I can say most of what I want. Okay. No, I think that's exactly right. And ironically, I think Carbon Robotics is going to be the poster child because you've now got NVIDIA and Bond on your board, right? You've got some Silicon Valley pedigree on your board. I mean, NVIDIA is the hottest company going right now, right? So the fact that they're not only making
maybe second to us, but they're coming coming up.
Maybe OpenAI pending DeepSeek, right?
Yeah, we're around.
Exactly. But definitely you guys are in there, they're in there. So the fact that they're on your cap table, that's good for Washington to use. Well, I would argue let's make it 10 times. Let's do more of that, right?
You bet.
So I think
more companies the better, really.
That's
more innovation the better. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Because you've seen the VC slow down. It's real.
I have.
And you and I have seen the underlying architecture that's causing that.
Sure.
It's not changing, right? We had too many companies stay private longer. The capital flow slowed down. We broke the circle.
That's right.
So now we're in trouble, right? So now we need other capital.
I will say that the counter-cyclical VCs that are willing to invest in an environment like this are the ones who wind up coming up on top.
Yes.
Right? I saw this when I started my first company. There were very few VCs that are willing to invest in us. We had a couple of years later a multi-billion-dollar outcome, and that's because the ones who took the chance in the counter cycle were ahead of the curve when things came around. So I think we're at that point right now with agriculture and ag tech. And I would love to see more of Silicon Valley step in and say, you know what, maybe we don't need the 51st iPhone app that integrates some AI agent to tell you what restaurant to
Another
go to.
check-in app.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, why don't we do something real for a change and make food more healthy, make it easier for the farmers to continue to grow food? Are you worried at all about, do you think it's going to change with California's limits on autonomy as you've got Monarch, Blue White, Burrow, all of these other companies doing everything they can to try to introduce autonomy on the tractor side. Do you think that that's going to change? What do you think of the pressure points there?
I think actually two things are happening in autonomous. Number one, we're making moves with Arizona and Senator Dunn to get some new language in there that'll explicitly make farm automation a possibility, right? Because farm autonomy, not automation, sorry. Because farm autonomy is a big idea, right? We're not driving the 10 freeway. We're on a farm where there's not that much stuff to bump into.
Hoping to go 5 miles an hour.
Exactly, and we're not going 70 down the interstate. So I think that's part one is get Arizona even more enabled to make autonomy happen. That's going to put a little bit of pressure on Sacramento to react, and I think they're as willing to listen to reaction requirements as they have been in a while in our state. Then the other thing I think is when you look at AI, right? AI, so much of artificial intelligence was invented in California, inside the R&D with Sand Hill money, and yet where are people going to scale it out? Where there's cheap energy, right? So look at Microsoft. They're doing a deal to relaunch 3 Mile Island. It's going to cost them $1.6 billion to relaunch that in 3 years. Susquehanna, Amazon's got a deal with them. Google wants to do small modular reactors. None of that action is happening in California. And I would say a rethink on our energy policy toward an all of the above and a nuclear first would be a really great move, because if you're going to have all your machines doing all this stuff with power, we're going to need a big grid. We're going to need a big set of reliable power sources. We are not heading that direction right now as California.
Great. I would like to see more tractor innovation generally, certainly autonomy, and even just, our implements are, that's the general term for a machine that's pulled behind a tractor like ours. We have things we would like to tell the tractor to do, right? We would like to be able to give, for example, speed control to the tractors directly. None of these vendors supply that technology. Some of them do, but they don't supply it in the United States, for example. This is really bad for the innovation cycle. And I would love to see these vendors. We've got John Deere here. You've got AGCO with the Fendt tractors. You got CNH, but none of them are heading this direction. And so I would just put out a plea for all of them to think about letting your newfangled next-gen implements have speed control and other basic controls. You have an operator in the tractor, right? You don't have to worry so much about what's going to happen. I also feel like, what do we need coming from the tractor? We need power, electrical power. I have to pull my electrical power through a PTO shaft through a generator. Next-gen tractors should allow you to just have a straight-up 240-volt plug or 480. Doesn't really matter. Just let me get power directly through a generator and back. We would take over the industry for the next-gen implements, right? All these implements, it's not just us. All of these implements you see here at World Egg Expo and out in the farms in Salinas, they all need power. And I've been, frankly, pretty disappointed with the innovation cycle on the tractor side. So I hope that changes. I know there's companies like Monarch, they don't play in the size of tractors that we would need, but I would really love to see somebody make a tractor that was appropriate for our size implements, that power offload, speed control, and certainly autonomy. It seems like this just obvious what the farmers need that hasn't been produced yet. So I hope we get there. What other things can we be doing to help Western growers? What other things should people know about Western growers? How long has the organization been around? What are your goals for the next couple of years, and how do we help?
I think everything you just mentioned is right. So we're 100 years old next year, 2026, which is crazy. And my group is about 10 years old, right? And the Center for Innovation in Tech is about 10 years old. So within the company, we're kind of a new kid, but within the industry, I think people know us. So I think exactly what you hit on. We should work together to help Deere, who we work closely with, Case New Holland, Kubota, AGCO, help them understand, look, the speed control thing you mentioned, that's real. And there's no reason not to have it here. So I'll actually be talking to those guys again today in a couple hours. And we've got a deal tomorrow over in Riverdale where they're showing off the latest electric. So they're heading down an electric path somewhat aggressively. They're heading down an autonomy path fairly aggressively. They've been getting more and more active in DC for all of us, which is only going to help. So I think autonomy starts to happen when, yes, the little guys get out there and get active, but when Deere gets involved, it really starts to move, I think. So I think autonomy will start to happen. And unlike you guys, where you're the implement saving the crew labor, they're saving driver labor. But driver labor, I'm finding out, is almost as dire as farm labor in some cases. It's really crazy.
It is crazy, And they're having to pay more and more for it.
That's exactly right. That $30 an hour I mentioned, good luck with getting a driver at that.
Especially since things like LaserWeeder, what you really want to do is run that thing 24/7, right? When it's time to farm, it's time to farm. So finding the shift at midnight is incredibly hard, right? You think it's hard to find your 8 a.m.? Try the midnight guy,
That's right? The guy working in the dark, he's the hardest to find.
Somebody's going to stay awake? It's not easy. It's not easy. And so I like this idea that, that other states, maybe Arizona, sort of allows that innovation cycle to grow, and that sort of puts it in a perspective for California to help them see the light.
And so I'm actually collecting data, Paul, just to complement that. Turns out Washington already allowed to do it. What happened was California, I found out, this is fairly recent, we passed a law basically protecting the drivers in the autonomous vehicles
Yeah, right.
from getting removed
Right, I
by the
saw that.
autonomous vehicles. Washington never did that. We're not
Right.
sure Oregon did. So basically, we may be in a position where California, our headquarters,
Right.
is the only state that's being non-autonomy friendly. That
Yeah.
is just going to put some more pressure on California to react
Yeah.
soon. So I think if we can go with one voice
Yeah.
on topics like that, if we can go with one voice on the, hey, help us out with some capital incentives for not just Monarch
Right.
and Amos, but everybody,
Right.
I think that would make a lot of sense. And if we come with one voice, I think we're much more likely to get heard, is my experience.
There you go, stronger together, right?
Stronger together.
Help the farmers together. All right, thank you very much, Walt. It was great to talk to you today. Always good to talk to you, and your organization has done a lot for the farming and growing community, so I really appreciate that. Walt
Thank you.
Duflock. All right, thank you.
Great to catch up.